Las Vegas, 2011.
Oh, multiple cars involved. Oh, my.
15 cars gone in an instant.
Very bad. I just pray to God that nobody's hurt Mike, because it's the ugliest thing I've seen him.
But the worst was still ahead.
We do not know who is inside that helicopter at this moment.
A sunny race turned into the darkest weekend of the century. The race began in a strange way because IndyCar launched an unusual challenge. Whoever starts from the back to win the race claims $5 million. It wasn't just about glory, but also about danger. Would anyone dare? One man said yes, Dan Wheldon.
Honestly, I always put a lot of pressure on myself anyway, and there's a lot of history and tradition to win the Indianapolis 500. This is slightly different. It's a unique opportunity.
If you think he did it for the money, you're wrong. The truth runs deeper, and it started back in 2003. When he made his IndyCar debut, he shocked the paddock by qualifying 5th. But during the race, there was something no one saw coming.
That won't be something that Brian Beinhardt... Wow!
And Weldon, upside down.
After the accident, everything changed. Dan, by 2005, was at the very top. He won 6 races.
The first time in motorsports, 4 teammates finished 1 through 4.
Dan Wheldon just walked away with the second flag. Your winner, Dan Wheldon, making a mess of the front.
Claimed the IndyCar championship and conquered the biggest prize of them all, the Indianapolis 500.
The checkered flag is out in Indianapolis, and the pubs are open in the UK. Dan Wheldon has just won the Indianapolis 500.
At just 27, Weldon became the face of American motorsport. But in racing, talent isn't enough. You need the right team. So Dan made the switch. On paper, it looked perfect, and he won his first race with them. But each year took him further from his peak. His reputation shifted from rising star to faded talent.
My goals are to win, and if I'm not achieving them, I'm not a happy person, and I don't feel successful, so...
By 2010, he was out of IndyCar entirely. Like many before him, Dan swapped the wheel for a microphone.
You look awful serious, D-Dub.
I am. It's my job now.
He also became a father, and racing seemed like something from a past life. But just when everything seemed over, the phone rang. On the line, Brian Herda, a former teammate turned team owner. He offered Dan a single race. And not just any race, the 100th anniversary of the Indy 500. Herda's team had no budget, no modern tools, just a 2003 chassis held together by grit. And yet, as the race unfolded, Dan refused to fade into the background.
Because he saved fuel at the beginning of the stint.
Well, Scott Dixon has gotten around, and so has Dan Wheldon. The white flag is in hand.
Lap after lap, he stayed tucked just behind the front runners. Just as the leaders began to run out of fuel, the race took an unexpected turn.
Oh, no! He hit the wall! Just like Thomas Scheckter!
Keep their foot on the gas!
Dan Wheldon is going to win the race!
That is unbelievable.
It was redemption for the team that had nothing, for the driver they'd all counted out, and for a sport that, for a moment, remembered what it meant to believe in fairy tales. Dan Wheldon was a champion once again, not just in the record books, but in the hearts of everyone watching.
It's just an incredible day.
Congratulations, Dan Wheldon, the winner of the Centennial Anniversary Indianapolis 500.
Taking my kids to Disney, baby. I'm taking my kids to Disney.
October 16th, 2011, the day of the $5 million challenge.
We announced the winner of the $5 million GoDaddy IndyCar Verizon Challenge, Anne Babenko. She's a very excitable character, a lovely lady from New Jersey, so I've got to make sure I do very well. She did tell me that she was going to put me in a headlock prior to the race, just as a warning to let me know what will happen if I don't deliver.
This was going to be an absolute spectacle of a race, but there was a tension in the air. Because Las Vegas was a new track not designed for IndyCar. Drivers hated it because of the danger. More on that later. But Dan had fought through tougher problems. He wasn't worried. As the race got underway, Weldon tried to fight his way back from the massive back crowd. He started passing cars already moving up 10 spots. And then
everybody else is opening up in front of him, and he...
Oh, here we go. Trouble contact and a huge crash. Up in turn number 2. Oh, multiple cars involved. Oh, my.
with cars everywhere, medics tried desperately to help the drivers. It was absolute chaos.
Very bad. I just pray to God that nobody's hurt, Mike, because it's the ugliest thing I've seen in IndyCar racing for forever.
When news began flooding in about injured drivers, silence fell over the paddock. Someone was rushed to the hospital by helicopter.
That's not a good sign. We do not know who is inside that helicopter at this moment.
But no one knew anything for certain, and the silence stretched on.
Dan Wheldon that was taken by air to University Medical Center.
Then the announcement came.
IndyCar is very sad to announce that Dan Wheldon has passed away from unsurvivable injury. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family today. The drivers have decided to do a 5-lap salute in his honor. It will take place in approximately 10 minutes. Thank you.
This broke the entire racing world. So what the hell happened? A minor collision in the middle of the pack triggered a devastating chain reaction. 15 cars were caught in the chaos. That was the risk of starting from the back. Dan had no time to react. He was doing over 220 miles an hour when he was launched into the air. His car flipped and slammed into the catch fence, cockpit first. The helmet struck a fence post directly. The impact was fatal. And the worst part, before the race even started, the paddock was shouting about the danger. The Las Vegas Motor Speedway was never designed for Indy cars. With its high banking and narrow lanes, it created the perfect environment for pack racing. Drivers bunched together at over 220 miles per hour, inches apart, with no room to brake. But the real issue went deeper than just the track. The car Dan was driving, the IR05, was dangerously outdated. At high speeds, it had a fatal flaw. If the front end lifted or touched another car, it could launch into the air. Then there was the field size. 34 cars, more than the Indy 500 on a shorter, tighter oval. Some drivers had limited oval experience. Some had limited funding. The mix was volatile. It wasn't just a race, it was a show, a made-for-TV finale built for ratings and headlines, with a $5 million bounty dangled as bait. And Weldon was a guy who raced for the fans, beloved by everyone. He wanted to give them a show, so who was to blame? It was corporate greed that overlooked all of these problems for cheap spectacle. Desperate for viewers, the race was the most watched for 5 years. IndyCar got its wish in the worst way. Racing didn't just lose a driver, it lost a hero. The next day, IndyCar would hold a tribute, a slow salute around the track. Just one number stayed on the board, 77. Inside Tony Kanaan's car was a piece of Dan's racing suit. It remains one of the saddest moments in motorsport history.
1 minute you're joking around before driver intros, and the next, Dan's gone. I told his son on Wednesday night when we had the parade on the strip, the Thursday night, I said to Sebastian, I said, I've known your dad since he was almost your size. He was 6 years old when I first met him. And then I bumped into a friend of mine, Jamie Spence, I used to race go-karts with. And him and I were just talking. We knew Dan since he was this little kid with...
Lionheart was going to be a legend in everyone's heart. Within a week, charity raised $600,000 for Dan's family. More than a tragedy, It was a moment of reckoning for the entire sport. Dan Wheldon himself had spent the year helping IndyCar design a safer, stronger car for the future. He never got to race it, but after his death, they named it in his honor, the DW12. And the changes didn't stop there. IndyCar also addressed the danger of head-on impacts. Like Formula One's Halo, they introduced the aero screen, a protective shield designed to keep drivers safe from flying debris and fence strikes. And the heartbreaking part? Weldon's only fatal injury came from hitting the fence. With an aero screen, he likely would have survived. As I mentioned earlier, he had children.
I have 2 boys that need me, and you get up and you just keep going. Now, did I have days and you know, even the first couple years where it was just like...
Horrible.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Now, Sebastian and Oliver Weldon are climbing the motorsport career ladder.
My name is Oliver.
Susie and her boys are very close.
Sebastian became the Skip Barber Racing Series champion in 2023 and now competes in USF Juniors. Oliver made his debut in 2024, finishing on the podium. Their mother, Susie Weldon, remains their biggest fan. All 3 appeared in the 2024 HBO documentary Lionheart. Each year, Dan is remembered through memorial charity events and Dan Wheldon Day in St. Petersburg.